Welcome to the Gravel Lot, the place where bikes are for everyone.
The Gravel Lot podcast is presented by Be Free Ride Bikes Apparel, providing a fully customized cycling apparel experience to provide you and your team the attention to detail and personal touch that you deserve.
And also brought to you by Grimpour Brothers Coffee, offering handmade coffee roasted weekly in small batches to give you the finest quality coffee to start your day. Choose their subscription service and earn your free bag of coffee today.
And by Hand Up Gloves. Great gear, better times. Providing a wide range of apparel for bikes, snow sports, and golf in multiple designs and fits to let your personality shine.
Our goal with the Gravel Lot is to inspire cyclists of all stripes to ride bikes, share their story, and have fun. We love all bikes and anyone who wants to ride them. So no matter where you sit on the spectrum of bikes, we'll always have a place for you in the Gravel Lot.
And now, the hosts of TGL, John Woolry and Doug McClintock.
Hello and welcome back once again to the Gravel Lot, the official podcast for all things cycling. I'm John, that's Doug, and you are here, and we are very, very happy that you are here. Whether you are a new listener to the show or an experienced Pebble, welcome to the new people. Welcome, you are our newest Pebble. Welcome to the Gravel Lot. So for the new folks, What is TGL and why did we call you guys Pebbles? I'll let Doug explain why we call you guys Pebbles. But long story short, Doug and I love bikes. We love talking to people about bikes. But we think very, very strongly that there's really nothing better than telling stories about riding bikes, and fully believe that the only thing better than riding them is sharing them with other people and your friends and making new friends. So no matter what ride you're on, we want you guys to know that you will always have a home, and your story will have a home here with us in the Gravel Lot. So if you guys like what we are doing today and you like what you hear, give us a subscribe, hit the like button, put a comment down below, tell us what you think, leave your comments for Philip today in the episode, and do all the things that the internet wants you to do to let it know that you like that thing and share it with your friends. That's really, it's a couple asks, but they're really simple.
They're very easy ones. They're just some button pressing and whatnot. You can do that right now. So do that because you are now a Pebble, and we are all Pebbles in the Gravel Lot of life. And so you're a Pebble, just like I'm a Pebble and John's a Pebble. We're all Pebbles. That's how we exist. We are part of this greater community. And since we're part of this community, we want you to make sure you check out all the people in our greater community that help us make this happen. Click all the links in our show notes and check out all the stuff we've got there. We've got our website, our Etsy store. Go support us on Patreon. We would love to have you. We are, putting content out there specifically, let people know what's coming, what's happening ahead of time, so you kind of get some sneak previews. There's going to be possibly some interesting things going on for Patreons this winter with some rides. I've got some other personal announcements I want to make this winter. So there's exciting stuff coming all the way around there. And everybody that has helped us make this thing, they're all amazing at what they do. So support them because they make this possible. If you want to send us questions or feedback, or I don't know, just lob poorly timed puns our way, do that. You can do it on any of the social platforms. We are at the Gravel Lot in all those spaces, or you can call us on our phone number, 513-400-5577. Please call me. Just call me. I'd love that. Call me. So, without any further ado, John, how has your ride been in the past couple weeks?
I'm just sitting here listening to you talk about the, adding the stuff to Patreon and all of that stuff. And I feel like I've been letting our Patreon supporters down lately because I just keep getting pulled in 75 different directions every day. So I'm sorry. We love you guys. Everybody that makes this show possible. Like, we can't state it enough. So I'll start with that. But the thing that I want to talk about has nothing to do with bikes, but everything to do with life. And I think it's very, very much kind of on message for the Gravel Lot. So you guys know that if you've been listening for a long time, I love race cars. That's kind of where I came into the world. And yesterday was a big deal for the world of auto racing in the States, for NASCAR specifically, with Bubba Wallace winning, African-American winning the first NASCAR race in the premier division of NASCAR since 1953, in Talladega, Alabama. So, like, let that sink in a little bit.
Yeah. He's from Mobile, right?
And he's originally from Alabama, grew up racing short tracks around the Southeast, and dealing with everything that you would imagine a young black kid driving race cars in the Southeast of the United States dealt with. So for everybody at 2311, I've actually got some friends down there that are part of that whole organization, and for what they've done it's their first year of being a team, and everything that comes with that of winning at the highest level of anything is incredibly difficult, but the message that it sends, I think, is so strong, and couldn't happen to a better person and somebody with very, very broad shoulders. So I think that's where my head is at, and I just feel like that's very on note for TGL, just because they got rained out Sunday and it happened yesterday. So other than that, it's more of the same for me, of feeling overwhelmed and still feeling like, even though we're recording bi-weekly now, that I feel behind. So okay. Doug, how are you?
I'm freaking excellent.
You've had a day.
I did have a day.
Let's be real. You've had a day.
I had a day, but you know what? That does not dampen my enthusiasm for everything that's going on in my world. I'm just stoked. Like, there's so much good stuff going on with stuff at Cora. Got my Cora hat on. Some stuff at Cora that's going on that's excellent. Some stuff happening with the Mount Airy Skills Park, and some new stuff happening there. But I think the thing that I'm kind of pulling into this week is how grateful I am for all the people that have surrounded me and given me a piece of themselves in some way to, like, kind of become a better me. And this weekend I was able to be reminded of that. So the park superintendent for Cincinnati Park, Steve Shuckman, is retiring, and they had his retirement party this weekend, this Saturday, and I guess I made the short list to be invited, which was pretty excellent. Apparently there are many revisions. And my boss, Jason Barron, showed up as well, which was cool. So I got to see him, but I got to see some other folks from the parks. But I got to spend some time with Steve, and Ellen got to meet him and hear from him. And it is with, like, some amount of melancholy that he's leaving for me, because he really was the person that I developed a relationship with in the parks. And he's really the person who was instrumental in helping me, understand how to navigate that community, and understand how to work within the city structure and the park structure to get things done, specific to Cincinnati parks. I've experienced other places, but this is a pretty, wild and woolly place to navigate. And, this is a guy who had, 42 years at the city, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's
seen it all.
Yeah, everything. He knows why Timmy hates Susie from 40 years ago, right? Like, right. He knows that stuff. And so he was really a very helpful guide for me and a friend, and really just taught me a lot about how to operate in those spaces and be a professional in a lot of those spaces. So this is my shout out to Steve publicly. Thank you, Steve, for your years of service to Cincinnati. Folks, if you've ever been to Cincinnati and you've been to the waterfront, that's his fault. If you've ever been to Cincinnati and you've been to Washington Park, that's also his fault. If you've ever been to Eden Park, with that's completely revitalized Crone Conservatory, that's also Steve's fault. Everything in the park system is basically Steve's fault. And we have one of the best park systems in the entire nation. And it is, without a doubt, a massive thanks to him and his whole team for making that stuff happen.
Well, I think also it's important to note how much of a friend of mountain bikers Steve is, and the
He
things
wasn't
that
before,
he's.
and to be clear, he was not before, but he is
But
now.
but he is a shining example of somebody who is capable of learning and acknowledging and figuring out how to make change. Like
Yes.
I think that's where watching it from neutral third party, watching everything unfold with Mount Airy going from like absolutely no to we have trails to something really odd happens on the trails and Cora becomes the main point of contact. It's weird, but the fact that now Cora is part of that narrative and part of that lexicon is really attributable to you and probably even more so to him.
Yeah, and it's just cool to see things progressing. I had a great meeting last night with some other folks. There's some exciting stuff coming, and that was good to hear about that. But that's a lot of the work that he did to really lay the groundwork within the organization and make us part of that community in a way that I don't think necessarily anyone else would have had the ability to, because his word spoke a lot. And so thank you, Steve, and thank you everybody at Cincinnati Parks who has supported him and his whole teams. All his friends were there. It was excellent. They were roasting him super hard. It was pretty good, making fun of how he corrects everything. And to be fair, every time I had a release I needed to put out, he corrected the living crap out of that thing. So thank you, Steve. Appreciate you for sure. So, well, I think that's actually a fairly all right segue, because this week we have someone joining us who, well, I don't know. He may or may not know that he is actually fairly responsible for the origin story of this podcast. Maybe I've never expressed that to him. But our guest this week has worn many different hats in the mountain biking world down in the Southeast. He is the former president of Cincinnati. See, look how I did that.
It's on your brain. Yeah.
On my brain, Central Alabama Mountain Peddlers Camp. If you've ever seen me wear my camp shirts, that is the organization down in Auburn, Alabama. And he is now the associate director of the Southeast Off-Road Bicycle Association, which is SORBA, which is a massive organization we'll talk about. He is a fantastic photographer of renown, and I must say, a brilliant dog dad to Ellie Pinkbelly, who I hope will make an appearance at some point in the middle of this, at least once. My dogs will, I'm sure, go crazy at some point. Camber says hi, Phil. And he is really a huge part of my origin story in bike advocacy. So we are so excited to have him with us tonight. Philip Darden, welcome to the Gravel Lot.
Awesome. Stoked to be here, guys. Really appreciate you having me.
I like the new headphones. You did not have those before, and
I did.
Yeah, excellent.
I forgot that these had a microphone with them too, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that'll help me focus a little bit better." So, yeah, went with these.
Yes.
Yeah. Excited to be here.
This is good. I feel like I get more of an inside story on my friend, because you're. I don't want to say for everyone that Doug has crossed paths with, good or bad, that you are responsible for those path crossings. But I think as highly as he speaks of you and in all of the stories I've already heard about you, I think you are very, very influential in getting him into all of this mess. So I'm very excited to hear your story, and I think all of our listeners are going to be too, because I think there's a lot of things that we're going to be able to pull from it.
Well, I'm honored. I don't know how much of an effect we did have. All I did was drag them out to some trails and help them get hurt from time to time. So.
But Phil, that's all it took.
Yeah.
So to be clear, and we'll clear the air on this just so that everybody knows, I moved to Alabama in 2010, and I was working for a company down there, and I had a very, very high pressure, high time demand job. And I was looking for something in my life to like chill out. And I had these cool neighbors that I had met, Hero and Lindsay, and they were like, "Oh, we should meet all our friends." And I ended up meeting Phil and his partner at the time, and Phil and Hero and this other guy, Phil, all rode mountain bikes. And I was like, "Man, I used to ride mountain bikes." And I do remember if we went to Zombieland, or
that was probably number one. That was probably first trip was Zombieland.
I know I took Phil's hardtail and we went and rode Zombieland, which is just a place that we cannot talk about. And it was impossible. I think I walked the whole freaking thing, but I was hooked. And that was that. And then you started dragging me to meetings.
Well, you were stoked, and that stoke level was, it's infectious. Like when somebody is as stoked as you were and still are, like you want to get that on board. You want to have that shared. So yeah, it was easy. Plus, you're a solid dude, Doug. Like, why wouldn't you want to have people around like you?
Don't inflate his ego. We always try and keep it somewhat tempered here on the show.
Put an insult in now. Yeah. That's when you just go say something mean.
Or just sprinkle them throughout just to like spread them out a little bit. That would be also good.
Yeah, I remember I showed up to a trail day to build that long bridge that we built way back in like 12. That was over the swampy section. And that was my first big time. So Phil kind of got me into all that, and we'll talk a little bit about where you were at that point. But I want to start with where bikes show up for you. We always like to start with this for people. Like, where did bikes begin in your life? Was this a youth thing, or did this come on later for you?
It's kind of convoluted, and I kind of expected this question to come, so I was thinking about it a little bit earlier today. My number one bike memory is I had to have been young, like 3 or 4 years old. Tricycle. My dad would carry this broomstick to help push me along as we'd go through the neighborhood.
Hurry up, Phil.
Yeah. And one day there's this big steep hill, and it probably isn't that big now, like looking at it as an adult, but as a kid, huge hill. I don't know what happened, but I just like feet off the pedals and sent it. And I remember like going down the hill, holding on and turning around and seeing my dad just like booking it after me, just running as hard as he could. And I just, see you later, sent it down the hill. And my dad went to graduate school in Colorado, and he always had this Ross 10-speed. It was always in the garage. He'd ride it periodically, but he would talk so much about how much he loved riding bikes in Colorado. And when they moved to Atlanta, where I grew up, he stopped riding because Atlanta traffic is what it is. Even in the 80s and 90s, it is what it was. And so, but he always talked about bikes, and I always had a bike as a kid, like always had a bike, always tinkering with bikes, always doing weird stuff with bikes, always jumping it, always breaking them. And probably my first like real mountain bike experience was growing up in Atlanta. My best friend in high school, this was like 98 or 99. So it was a couple years after Atlanta hosted the Olympics, which was the very first time mountain biking was ever in the Olympics. And he and I went and rode the course. Cool. I had just done my brakes. He had really, really crappy brakes. They're both cantilevers, and they both were really cheap. Like mine was a full rigid Trek 820.
Yes.
So even perfectly adjusted, they didn't work.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Right.
And so it was still the original course. And after 2 years, that course had just been eroded and just nasty, ruts all over the place. And we're going down this hill, and all of a sudden I get stuck in a rut, and I hit the brakes really hard, and I actually stop, and my buddy just cannot stop. And I feel this light tap on my back, and I turn around. Then all of a sudden, my buddy's in front of me 10 feet. He had crashed into the back of me, rolled over my back, and landed on the ground. And I was like, oh, wow. Mountain biking stuff is pretty serious.
Sweet crash.
Yeah. And it was really from that minute, like totally hooked on mountain biking. Came to college at Auburn and had a full suspension Giant at the time, was mountain biking at our local national forest, and eventually kind of lost my way a little bit with bikes, which is kind of a bummer. But then my dad actually started riding again, and like for real riding on the road. And he got me back into it. And so it was always my dad that was like the guiding force behind riding bikes. and he and I ride still today, which is cool.
So I'm curious about something that you said in there that you said I always had bikes, was always jumping them off of things, and was like they were always a part of my kind of sphere. And your dad kind of talked about them romantically, and just there was a love affair beyond kind of I can go ride to my friend's house. What do you think about that specific situation? Like clicked for you? Like what about it? Was it watching your friend crash? Was it the communal yeah, like the communal I mean some people like the blood, that's fine. Like the communal aspect of it, like what do you think about that specific scenario as a whole for you was like this crystallizing moment?
It was the fitness, the exploration, the, getting outdoors, everything about it, like the mechanics of it. Just, I don't know, like I always had this weird fascination with bikes, and now, like, as an adult, that's just what I do. Like that's who I am. It's like bikes and cameras. That's, if you want to talk about anything, that's generally what I'm going to talk about.
I love that there's a through line, because I think and you said you got away from it. And I think a lot of people do, right? We move away from things as maybe time doesn't present them for us. We have other aspects of our life that we need to do. And so you were in school, right? And that kind of took you away to some extent at that point in time. You were seeking other things. What'd you go to school for? I know, but what'd you go to school for? And where did this, photography piece of things come in? Because I think that's another strong through line in your life. And anybody who follows you or knows you knows that when you're out on your bike or you're out exploring, you're taking photographs of what you're up to.
Yeah. So, probably to answer the first question, I went to school at Auburn University, got my degree in graphic design, spent a number of years before I actually finished my degree trying to figure out what the heck I wanted to do. I was kind of big in the skateboarding culture at that time, and designing skateboards and designing t-shirts sounded really cool. So let's go do graphic design. I also wanted a job where I could wear shorts to work and it not be a faux pas. Big guiding force in my life was being able to wear shorts to work.
Man, I respect that comment. I respect the hell out of that comment.
It's just like, I didn't want to be this stuffy guy in slacks and a polo shirt every day. Like that's that's not me. That's not who I am. And so I was like, all right, what can I get a degree in that I can wear shorts and sandals and t-shirts every day?
Little did you know that in many years later, there'd be a pandemic where that's all you didn't even need to wear pants. Yeah. You could just go bottomless.
Yeah. Right. Who says I have pants on right now?
Oh,
I do, but but then the photography aspect of it, that started in high school. Again, my parents had this old Nikon SLR camera, film camera, and I picked it up and I started taking photos. I would get my film developed at one of the local processors where there was actually somebody that would process film back in the day. And then I kind of lost it a little bit, but while I was in school, I took a photography class. It was required through our program, and we did film, and we had to process and develop our own film in the class, and it really kind of stuck at that point. And I was a professional photographer for a little while, did portraits and weddings and things like that. And this is kind of like the story of my life, is I have these 6-year phases of employment where I do random things for like 6 to 10 years, and then I move on and do something else. So that phase of my life, it was photographer Phil.
I don't know anybody like that at all on this call, aside from you. Just no one else.
Yeah. But like, even now, I still love and adore photography. Like it's one of the things that I'm passionate about. I love getting outside and taking photos. And it's such a nice companion to the cycling that I do, where I can get out and I can take photos at this great spot. And then, because I do a lot of landscape photography, and landscape photography is in that like sunrise, sunset time period, but bike riding is in the middle section. So I can get up and do some sunrise photography, and then I can go ride my bike, and then I can eat and drink some beer, and then do some photography in the evening.
I think those the idea of capturing all of the landscapes is I think it's almost an untapped piece of why cycling is so beautiful to so many people. Like, yes, it's easy to acknowledge the helicopter shots from a Grand Tour and see how beautiful these mountain ranges are and all of that stuff. But I think the golf shot that keeps a lot of us coming back is we want to be out in nature. We want to be out amongst things that aren't, concrete and blacktop and things that just feel restrictive. And to me, it's a natural extension to try and capture that for posterity, because that's really what I feel like a lot of the memories that we have of whether it's mountain bikes, gravel rides, road rides, whatever they are, like your mental snapshots are what you kind of take from that. And you don't necessarily remember the wattage or the mileage or the Strava numbers or anything like that, but you have the memories of like, remember that electrical box, or do you remember that sunset, or whatever the item is that like was memorable about that ride.
And the sounds and smells, like when you're in a high alpine and you smell the pine trees, and just like that sense of smell and that memory always sticks. And like, if I think about a ride where I'm riding somewhere like that, it's the smell that really brings me back to it. And the photographs help stimulate that memory. Yeah. And being a creative person, I need a creative outlet, and photography is it. Like, that's what I love to do for my creativity at this point in time.
Yeah, I think we all wish that, like, we're like, oh no, we'll take a panoramic, and then it's like, God, this is a garbage photo. This is so bad, right? Because I have no clue. I am notoriously the worst at taking photos. Ellen is trying to help me get better because she's of the generation that knows how to like selfie and all that stuff. And I'm like,
You had a great one the other day. I got to give credit where credit's due. Green bike on the mint green background. It
ended up looking really bad though because of the sun was too direct. It's a whole thing. I got criticized as soon as I showed it to Ellen. So, like, let's be clear, we all have the snapshot in our head, but I think it is awesome to see people who can see the same thing we're seeing and actually translate it into a visual medium. And you do that really well. And I think it allows people to connect with those memories in that way. And I think that's excellent stuff that you do. I got to put some new art in here. So we'll chat offline so I can order some prints from you. Cool. So you're at Auburn, you get back into bikes, and your dad ropes you back into this. How did you discover like mountain bikes in Auburn? What were things like when you got involved in mountain bikes in Auburn? What was the community like? What were the trails like? What was the situation like? Because at some point you start getting involved in advocacy and getting engaged with this community. But what was the community like when you kind of got there and started riding bikes?
It was basically non-existent. There was a couple people, and for whatever reason, I happened to live on the right street at the right time, because anybody that was into mountain bikes lived on the street. So here in Lindsay were my neighbors. They lived down the street from me, and this was 20 years ago. And then some really influential people, Ursula and Jay Sandifer, also lived right down the street from me. Look Ursula up. She is a beast and a legend in women's mountain biking from like early on. And Jay builds custom frames. So he's got a company called Wildcard, and they do steel, titanium, custom frames, mountain bikes, gravel bikes, and they make a solid product. So I lived on this street where these influential people from mountain biking were there. Fast forward a few years, these people are still in my life a little bit, and I'm racing and getting kind of burnt out. Like, bike racing turns into I have to go ride my bike rather than I want to go ride my bike. Anybody that's raced knows that feeling. Like,
yes.
I just got a little wave of anxiety thinking about it. Yeah. Wow.
It sucks because you're like, man, I really love this, but it's also like, it's kind of my job. So I wanted to direct my energy towards how can I make biking better for more people than just myself? Because racing is just, it's all about yourself. It's all about what I'm going to do. What are my numbers? How's my heart rate? All this. How can I make it so that bikes are better for other people? And an opportunity to start building trail at Tualatin State Park here locally came up, and I was like, sure, let's do that. That sounds like fun. So I go out with a few guys. We were seriously a ragtag team of like 5 to 8 people at the very beginning. I could count how many mountain bikers there were on my hand. And we're out there at Tualatin. We're building trail. We know a little bit about what we're doing, but we don't know 100% about what we're doing. And we get the IMBA Trail Care crew to come by. And this was the big catalyst for our organization to get started, is the IMBA Trail Care crew. So they come in and they could do a class about how to build trail, how to build sustainable trail, and how to form an organization. Coming out of that, we had a meeting with a few folks. We're sitting there and trying to figure out who's going to do what. And they're like, who wants to be vice president? I'm like, sure, I'll do that. I don't know what it entails, but
yeah,
let's do that.
Raise your hand. You have a job.
It seems important, but not the most important. I think that's like this. That's the sweet spot. You never want to shoot for the moon, but it's like just laying just short of that. VP, that's perfect.
Yeah. And, you know, if we're talking literary terms, little did I know what that one small that one small moment would do for my life and change my trajectory, you know? So I was the vice president for 1.5 years, and then I was the president for 5.5 years for our local chapter. During that time, we went from a 10-mile trail system, 13-mile trail system, to a 25-mile trail system. We executed a $250,000 RCP grant, which built 6 miles of trail. We built a trail prior to that was like a gateway to that area that was an additional 2 miles that myself and some of the other volunteers laid out. And from there comes NICA. And on that moment, mountain biking in Auburn and Opelika just explodes. It absolutely explodes. People are riding bikes. You'd never see anybody with a bike on the back of their car driving around town. And now you can at least drive around and see a bike rack, see a bike on somebody's car. And it was great. Like we helped build the culture. It's not there yet, and we still have a lot of work to do here locally, but we helped get that train rolling and start the culture.
Well, it's funny to talk to advocates when we have them on the show, whether it's leadership for NICA or IMBA chapters or even national organizations. Is that's the asterisk that everybody puts on it. Is it's never done. It's always in progress. But I think in what you talk about, you're talking about, okay, I'm graphic designer, doing wedding photography, but now I'm jumping into writing RTP grants and navigating bureaucracy. That usually the people that navigate bureaucracy seems like they're born into bureaucracy, and they're somehow just like they become an intern when they're a toddler, and they just are like they live in government world, and they're like stamped out and they're like government people. So coming in from the outside, it had to be abrupt for you. So what was your learning curve like of going from I just like riding this and I wanted to like make this more accessible for people to okay, here are the hoops we need to jump through, and this is how you actually do this, because there's a very specific process, there's a very specific way to write all of that stuff, to format it, and deliverable time periods and all of that stuff. So talk to us a little bit about your learning curve on that and how the first couple went for you.
You know, it falls under the category of how I've approached most things in my life, is that I'll say, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. And, you know, like fresh out of college, I worked at a web design agency in Atlanta, and I knew nothing about web design, not a thing, didn't know how to code, didn't know how to do anything. So it's just like, all right, well, we're going to figure this out. on the fly, see how it goes. And I've carried on that mentality for pretty much my entire life, fake it till you make it type of thing. Um, and the contracting world, again, it comes back to my dad. So my dad is he's a project manager for construction. So I would kick it to him and say, hey, what does this look like? Does this look good? I Google searched contracts for construction and kind of compiled 3 different ones. And does this look legit? And he'd be like, okay, well, you need to change this, this, and this. This sounds like it's what it's supposed to be, and move on. So yeah, like, just if you want to figure it out, you can figure it out. And if you have the drive to figure it out, you can get there. And I feel like anybody has that ability to do so. It just takes the want to do so. If you don't want it, you're not going to do it.
Do you think so? I remember a evening in the cabin opening up the sealed bids. I remember this evening very well for the RTP grant, right? And it's your fault that I know what an RTP grant is and how to execute one. But I remember that evening opening that up, and all of us, coming to consensus, and there was a whole process of how things had to get opened, and it's a whole crazy thing. People look into it; it's wild. Do you think that now, compared to then, there is a resource growth? If you want to walk into this now, do you think we are in a space that it's a lot easier to? Because I feel like it is from my perspective. There's a lot more lexicon out there now. There's a lot more people who've done this thing.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's really my job now, is to help explain and be a sounding board for if anybody has these questions. Like, I'm thankful to have the experience where I learned how to do it and figured it out. And now I have the ability to pass on that knowledge. Like, that's why I got my job. And I do feel like there's a lot more readily available information for these things than there was in 2013 or 14 when we did this.
So, okay, there's the open question. You work for SORBA, right? SORBA, the Southern Off-Road Bicycle Association. Mm-hmm. What the hell do you do? For people who don't know what SORBA is, what's SORBA? And what do you do, Phil? What's your title, and what do you actually do?
So I'm the associate director of SORBA, and I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Any executive or associate director for any nonprofit knows that they're going to be aware of many hats. So I have conference calls, and I help people with paperwork, and I do graphic design work, and I manage our social media accounts, and I manage our website. It's one of those things that it's a really weird job to sit there and think about all the things that I do, and how more or less every position that I've ever held prior to this job has been getting me ready to be in the job that I am. Like, again, it's a hindsight type thing. You don't know the impact of a moment until you get to the point where it's taking you. Like, I would have never have known that being the vice president of a nonprofit organization would lead me to figuring out how to do RTP grants, would lead me to doing a lot of volunteer work for trails, would lead me to being the associate director of SORBA. And who would have told you that the associate director of SORBA would also need to know how to do graphic design work and do photography and update websites and understand social media? And, it's just, there's not enough descriptors in the job description to tell you what all you need to do to be prepared. I don't know. It's weird to think about. And every time I tell somebody what my job is now, they're like, of course it is. That's the most perfect opportunity for you that you could have possibly asked for.
Yeah, and you totally nailed it when it comes to working in nonprofits, whether it's true volunteer work or it's actually being within some sort of level of leadership in a nonprofit. Is almost every single employee, no matter what your level is, you need to kind of just be water, and you need to flow wherever the work needs to go and fill in the gaps wherever it is. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit before, and I think Sorba it's a very unique case for how something's organized, and I think there's a lot of learnings that we can pull out of the way that the southeast of the states are organized in terms of trails. So let's talk a little bit now that we know. We'll call you in charge. Like, kind of important deal. You're kind of a big deal.
Tara's in charge. I do all the other things that she
He's
doesn't
the
want to do.
assistant to the regional manager.
To us,
to the regional manager.
Philip.
Yeah.
To us, you are a big deal. So right now, you are a big deal.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Sorba, that's what we're talking about. So talk to us about what it is and kind of a little bit about its history. We talked about it a little bit, but in the green room before the show. But like, walk us through how all of this is structured, because I think we can tie this into some of our conversations that we've had recently with Kent from IMBA and some other of our local chapter folks that we've had come in to talk about some of the challenges that people have locally.
Yeah, so Sorba formed in 1989. We were based in Atlanta, and we had one chapter. But they had the wherewithal to name it the Southern Off-Road Bicycle Association. So, it's kind of like how when we started camp, we didn't want to be the Auburn Opelika Bicycle Mountain Bike Association. We wanted to be Central Alabama. Like, give yourself room to spread.
Yeah, take over a region.
Yeah. You don't want to limit yourself as far as where you are. So Sorba had the wherewithal and the right mindset to name themselves what they did in 1989. And other organizations formed and wanted to become part of it. In 2010-11, Sorba became part of IMBA. So we were the first region of IMBA, and all of our chapters moved on to being IMBA chapters. And IMBA actually formulated their now defunct chapter program based on what Sorba did. So we were one of the leaders in an overall organization of chapters. Things didn't go so well for IMBA for a short while there. 2017 was a difficult time frame for IMBA itself.
They have admitted as such. Yes,
and have since rebounded greatly. Yes. And I think IMBA is as strong, if not stronger, than they were in their heyday back in like 15, 16. And so during that kind of downturn, Sorba pulled back, and we still have a great relationship with IMBA. We're still on their local partner program, but IMBA started functioning more autonomously. We kept our chapter program, which we're now at 48 chapters. We have our board of directors meeting at the end of this month, and we're going to vote in 2 additional chapters, so we should be at 50, which 10,000 members plus.
Thanks.
And so what you get out of Sorba is you get the assets from IMBA, and then you also get Terry and I, which I think are fantastic assets, and the shared knowledge of our 48, soon to be 50 chapters. And that shared knowledge is huge. You're not working on an island by yourself trying to figure it all out. You have these other groups out there that have either figured it out or know at least a way to figure it out. They can help you move forward.
Yeah, that was really the piece that I wanted to pull out of this, because you guys, Doug and Philip, you guys already kind of know this story. You guys know each other so well already. So for me, I'm coming into this pretty green. But so you mentioned about when IMBA became part of Sorba, and there was a little bit of a rocky time. And I got to believe if you have an organization that's functioning well on its own, and it has its own chapter system, and then there's somebody else that kind of comes in, and there's going to be clash, there's going to be conflict, there's things like that. So since you were around and you saw it, what was your take on the transition of IMBA coming in? Because I think that's where a lot of folks still have salt in places for the way that
they're all old. They're all old. They can be quiet. Sorry, that's my personal opinion. Sorry, I'll get to it. Now let's get.
But I think it's important to talk about how that transition works and how it can be done correctly, and things that can be learned from when it's not done correctly.
So I think that Sorba coming on and being a part of IMBA was a great idea. I still think it was a great idea. I think that it's the outside circumstances that IMBA had the issues with, which really led us wanting to bring back ourselves as an organization. And they disbanded the chapter program, but we felt that the chapter program was important. And that's why we still firmly believe that we have 2 meetings a year. We host everybody, we bring everybody together. And so yeah, like I don't think that the saltiness of where IMBA was and what they are even currently, I don't think that that's founded. Like I happily work with our IMBA local partners. The director of IMBA local lives in the Southeast. He lives in Johnson City, Tennessee. And I feel like we have a great representation. We have a good relationship with them. We talk on a regular basis. And you're always better off with a bigger voice, and bigger voice for more numbers. So if you can have somebody that's fighting your cause on a national level, and they also have people in Washington that are fighting for trails and sustainable trails, that's always better. And that's also the Sorba mindset, is the collective voice of Sorba is going to be stronger and better, especially when you're talking to governmental entities like the National Forest Service, or
Yes.
They want to know who has the biggest voice.
Yeah.
And in those instances, we're going up against, and against is not the right word. We're compared to organizations like the Sierra Club and Backcountry Horsemen, where they're fantastic organizations that get stuff done, and they have a huge membership. And so we need to have the same numbers in order to have our voices heard just as loudly as those voices are heard.
I think that's something that's missed by a lot of local chapters. We've had this challenge organizing everybody in Ohio. Years ago, there was a thing called AMBA, and it was like how Ohio was organized, and it became a problem because there was a bad message board. This is back when message boards existed, kids, back before.
It was Reddit before Reddit.
Right. Yeah, right. Reddit before Reddit was Reddit, and horrible things happened on there. RIP the message boards. But it was even before my time. It was like when I was living in the Southeast, right? People were blowing up at each other, causing all these problems, right? But that wasn't the issue. The idea of having a organization, and now OMBA, there's a difference. Not AMBA. OMBA has come.
It's more Zen. Oh,
yeah, it is. Right. Exactly. Has come about, and it is chapters that are in and out of IMBA, but all the people in Ohio communicating together, because really what you're saying there, Phil, I think is the biggest and most important piece of this, is you are stronger when you don't have to learn a lesson. When you have a Phil Darden to be like, hey, Philip Darden, I have a problem with an RTP grant. How do I do this? And he can be like, hey, here's a model of what we did in Auburn. Here's a model of what we did in Atlanta. Here's a model of what we did in Tennessee and Chattanooga. Like, you can provide that volume of information. You're starting to be able to duplicate yourself and teach those people the skills that then they can teach the next crew of people that comes on when those people get burned out, as it always happens in volunteer organizations. But you're starting to build people's ability to do the thing in ways that we didn't have 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so I find it odd when people push against regional organizations and push against national organizations that aren't really making decisions, but are really just a wealth of resources and people that you can ask questions of. And I've never had a situation where I've looked to an organization above and said, hey, I need this information, at least within this specific trail building nonprofit.
I was glad that you qualified that statement, because I was going to call it out for a second.
Let's be clear. And reached up and said, hey, I have a question about this. Can you put me with the right person, or is there the right person out there? And sometimes, like you said, people say, hey, I don't know the answer to that. But I think that is the strength and the power of someone like Sorba in that kind of space, to give people the backstop. And I think people are remiss if they're poo-pooing it and complaining about it. I think it's better to have that organization.
And I think you're 100% correct. And one of the things that drives me nuts is, you know, and I did this when there was a post on Pink Bike last week about Niner doing an IMBA bike, and didn't even read the article, went straight to the comment section.
Just go right there. That's why I'm not on Pink Bike
I
anymore,
was going to say that is the guy who manages the social media account. It's like I don't care what the actual thing is.
Says,
I need
what
to
are
go
they saying
straight
about
to the
us?
comments.
Yeah. And, you know, it's just nothing but blast fest on IMBA itself. Nothing but blasting IMBA. And I guarantee you, the same people that were blasting IMBA on that were also so stoked about the World Cup being in Snowshoe. And you know who built the trails for the World Cup at Snowshoe? IMBA Trail Solutions.
Yeah, it wasn't me or you or John.
Yeah.
It was a trail building leg of IMBA that built the race courses at Snowshoe. So it's like it drives me nuts. And then it's also the same people that are entitled that think that these trails are their trails and that you know, they don't have to do anything for trails and the trails just magically appear. Well, no, trails don't magically appear. They come from volunteers. Always, everywhere you go, they come from a volunteer. It's not the state parks, not national forests, it's not these people. It's a volunteer out there spending their sweat equity getting that trail built and maintained.
And even if it's not physically, they're doing it on the like paper pushing, idea pushing, getting money together. There's somebody doing work in that space.
Mm-hmm. In their free time, 99% of the time, in their free time.
Yes. So you have 48 nay 50 chapters. How the heck do you guys keep everybody rowing in the same direction? Like, this is a cat herding question. How do you do it? Like, how does that operate within the organization? How do you guys keep a common direction?
I don't think that you really, well, I mean, everybody has the same general, like basic common direction of more trails and having access to trails. Other than that, like, you really just have to keep people between the ditches. Like, it's not like we want everybody building the same type of trail. We want everybody doing the same type of thing. That we want to have individuality in these organizations. We want them to do their thing. There's just a couple things that we really got to focus on just from a general liability standpoint that we want them to do. But outside of that, no, I'm not a micromanager. I don't like people micromanaging me, and I don't like it's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go in and say, you need to do your chapter this way. No, do your chapter how you want it. If it works, great. If you need help with it, I can help.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to something you were just talking about how a lot of people look at and poo-poo regional or national organizations because they think that it's somehow going to take away from the local flow or the local whatever feel, vibes, word, hashtag thing. But like the thing that is being missed in all of that is, yeah, you're just acting as Armco and you're taking something that could take somebody 3 months to teach themselves and learn and fail and potentially need to do over again and take another 3 months. And you're saying this is a 30-minute conversation and then an hour reading through an article and then search and reapply to your situation because we've already done this. We've already researched it. We have the people that write this correctly and have already done these things already. Like, go make it whatever you want and use whatever hashtags you want and do whatever local flow vibes thing you want. Make it yours, make it relative to your area and make it feel like your area and get everyone stoked in your area. But here's how to get all of the suits to buy into it. And here's how to get like Doug. Yeah, like Doug, what you were talking about at the the Shuckman's retirement party. Like, here's how to get the parks people engaged and invested in what you're doing rather than continually running up against like mountain bikers don't listen to me and they just want to build blah 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 and runners don't listen to us and just like falling into the trap of us versus them, which is not at all what anybody wants. And it's like, it's just short-sighted. And I think that the folks, I wonder if there's a higher level of success for you guys with the chapter program because you precede IMBA's existence. and you have a much longer lifespan of proving validity and value to all of the chapters. Like the things that you're providing, if nobody has any experience with working with those resources, then they have no concept of how to value them. So it's just like, well, whatever, I can do that. I can do the graphic design, or I can manage our social media accounts, or we can whatever to the website. Like, we'll figure it out. But then when you actually work with a group that can help you do those things, or give you best practices on top of best practices for grant writing and managing PR campaigns, or managing fallout, or managing insurance, or all the like boring stuff that really sinks any of this advocacy work that we're talking about. It's like that's the stuff that puts the tiny little holes in the bucket of water that eventually leak out all over the place. And if you have enough positive experiences with those things, I feel like you can build a little bit of kind of a bank account with folks, and have a little bit more trust that's established. Where I think where a lot of folks go wrong is they just put dictations down, and there's not enough nuance to how it's going to benefit folks, and there's just like this immediate reaction of. I feel like I'm talking about our world right now, that there's protests all around the country with people like protesting vaccine mandates and things. I'm not, but I guess I am.
You are. I mean, it's basically the same. Like,
I realized that like right as I was wrapping up that thought, I was like, oh man, this sounds exactly like that. But I mean, it's all the same kind of mindset of, you're not seeing the whole board. These folks are seeing the whole board, and they're doing what's best for the most.
This is the moment on the podcast on the video podcast, where we will drop up the Wayans brother popping up in the window with his mail carrier outfit saying "message." I mean, it's you're 100%. It shuts doors. People don't. If you've got the lexicon, Philip, then you're able to help people.
Yeah, and I do agree 100%. And one of the weird things, which wasn't something that I expected when first taking this job, is, I show up to this important meeting early on, like 3 months into doing the job, and I'm like, I know basically the same amount of stuff that I knew prior to working this job.
Did you have shorts on? Did you have shorts on?
I had jeans on. I did not have.
Oh, see, it's tough. You're not living the dream yet.
Well, it was March, so it was still kind of chilly outside.
Cold.
There's a caveat.
Jeans is dressed to impress, casual.
Okay, just checking, just making sure what sort of meeting this was.
And they were dark blue jeans, so they were fancy jeans.
Fancy, yes.
Embellishments.
Yeah, but like everything in the meeting goes smoothly, and afterwards, we're talking with the folks from the chapter, and they're like, wow, that was the smoothest meeting we've had with these people ever. And they're like, it's all because you were in the room. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't do anything really. I just kind of showed up. But that's also the benefit of having these regional organizations is, you have somebody from the regional come up and be like, hi, how's it going? My name is Philip, and I am the associate director of SORBA, and blah, 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 blah. And like sit there and smile and talk to people, and stuff happens. Who would have thought?
I wear dark jeans. Listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah. If logos and dark jeans.
Right. Yeah.
Happen in your area.
Yeah.
Shocking.
My logo, club ride shirt, and dark jeans. Like, hello, how's it going?
But isn't there something funny about how? And I think this is something that I didn't necessarily experience until you walk into a room in that space. When you walk in a room and you have the cachet, people listen for some reason and change their tone. Like,
I love how you say that. For some reason, people listen.
But it's all perception. It's falderall and fiddly-dee, as they would say, right? It's nothing. It's just imaginary, right? You're still Philip Darden. You're still like, we could go pound beers and sleep in tents in the in Bentonville, right? Like, but you have experience and time and effort and space to allow people to understand and recognize your experience. How do you teach people as chapter leaders to do that? How do you replicate that? Because I'm trying to figure it out.
I don't know. I don't know. You have to have an extroverted person, number one. So somebody that's willing to talk to anybody. That helps. Yeah. Like if you're willing to talk and you can actually hold a conversation with a complete stranger, that helps a ton. And you're able to communicate. I think the other side of it is being able to communicate in a semi-professional manner. You sound like you know what you're talking about, and you're confident in the things that you say. But that's true for any meeting. You can go to any meeting regardless if we're selling didgeridoos or we're selling mountain bike trails. Like,
you have a side business now that we need to know about? Yeah.
No,
Cool.
no. But like if you know your didgeridoo and you know what sound it's supposed to make and you know that these people need it, you can talk about it eloquently and know what you're talking about. It goes a long way.
Well, that goes back to something you said sparked a thought for me earlier in the day that Doug and I were talking about sitting in meetings with people who kind of lose the plot of the meeting and get caught up in the weeds and kind of lose the board, as it were, thinking about the chess set. Like they just lose sight of where we're going and get focused on where we are. And I think that's where a lot of folks go wrong, and I think that's where a lot of those internal squabbles happen, is people getting caught up in like, no, this is mauve, it's not purple, it's lavender, it's not mauve, and like rather than no, it's a cool color. Like losing sight of the global aspect of it versus the specific nuance to it, and having people in the room that can say, look, I hear you on the mauve and the lavender, but we're going for a cooler color palette overall, and that's what we're trying to communicate to these people over here, is what we're trying to do. Like Doug's background is, we can argue what color it is all day, but
it's sexual as hell.
It's
Let's be clear.
It's a Prince video is what it is. That's really what it is.
Yes.
And for those of you listening to the audio podcast, go to our YouTube and subscribe and watch our live streams, and you can see what Doug's background looks like. But I think it's everything that you're saying. It's all of your experiences piling up into creating somebody that is super capable, that is comfortable in his own skin, and that is capable of going up and saying taking complicated situations and simplifying them down to communicate to somebody who is either a barrier to your success or somebody holding the keys to your success. And getting them engaged in your process. And that's not a skill that everybody has, but it's a skill that everybody can acquire if they are capable of saying, I don't know everything that I need to know, but there are people smarter than me that I can trust in this, and I'm going to rely on them. Just like what you're talking about with having chapters and having one kind of overarching entity that can take from chapter 17 and give to chapter 32, and you're facilitating those conversations so everybody gets smarter. And I think that's the piece where people get caught up is just getting, because it's what we do. It's like, right, we get so caught up in I need to do this interval rather than, man, this bike ride's awesome. Like just getting so caught up in the minutia versus just kind of the more global aspect of it. That's why it is nice. And I do think that we need more things like what Sorba is. Like I would love to have one in the Midwest. And I think the guy on our live stream to my other side here would be a good one to be running it and to be in your position. Because he is very extroverted and loves talking to people and loves being the center of attention. So he checks a lot of boxes from that perspective.
I don't necessarily love being the center of attention, but I will certainly put myself there that if that's what is needed to happen.
Yeah.
And it's the willingness, I think, more than anything else.
It's the ability to step into that breach. You don't always have to be that person. There are other people that need to be there, but you need to be able to like, oh, we're losing the room. Hold on a second.
Sure. Yeah, that's what it is okay, this, I can read this room and I know what's going on, and I know that I can actually affect change in this, and I need to put myself aside because I can go fix this. I can go bridge this gap. And it's not necessarily that like, hey, everybody look at me. It's more of just like, okay, we're trying to get A to D right now, and I can give you B and C. Like, let me do that. Like, let's go do that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. One of the things that may be case in point with this is that when you're working as a volunteer, you're passionate about whatever it is. You're not just going to sit there and give your free time to something that you don't care about. You're 100% passionate about it. And what happens a lot of time is that passion turns into emotion, and emotion turns into you not communicating as well as you should. And it does take a certain personality to be able to recognize that emotion and say, all right, I need to dial it back. I need to think about what's being said right now, and then be able to communicate the words that need to be said rather than the things that are screaming in my head right now. Yeah.
Strategery.
Yeah.
It's all about strategery. So if we're looking at strategery, someday we'll have 42 on the show. It will be a weird time with cat pictures, cat painting.
Here for it.
But if we're talking about strategery and we're thinking about this in a way that isn't so, like we've been talking about like, hey, how do you manage these things, and where are the strengths, and what are the things you need to develop, and what are the muscles you need to bring? What qualities do you think leaders in this space need to develop? Right? Like what things do they need to like, what muscles do they need to build? I mean, granted, it's good to have calves like Philip Darden and be able to climb like a goat, but like what actual things do you look and hope that leaders in these spaces of chapters would develop, and like what things do you try to build in them?
Acceptance of what's given to you with the idea that it can lead to more. A lot.
That's so good.
It's so many people come in and they have this grand idea of what they want to build. They want to build all these trails and they want to do this, and they go in and they ask for the whole thing, and they say, no, we'll let you build this little bit over here.
See, now
and
you're
get down about it.
Now you're talking about the infrastructure build, not about mountain bike trails, right?
I'm talking about mountain bike trails, man.
I feel like we're having all of these like double conversations right now.
It could be the same thing, but that's also a life lesson too, like accept what you've been given and hope for more afterwards.
Yeah.
Prove them that there's value behind them giving you access to that. It's simple, but it's also very, very challenging to a lot of people to accept that fact.
What about kind of the emotional qualities? Because I mean, we're talking, I'm talking to Doug, who went to school for theater. You're a graphic designer. I went to school for graphic design as well. But I think to Butch and UPS guy, and I think to Terry, who's blue collar, and I think to so many of the folks that we've had on that are the entire gamut of blue collar, white collar, executive level, trust fund, like they're all over the board in terms of what their outside the bike life is when they're not wearing tight clothes. But I think there's probably some commonalities that you see having access to that many chapters that are kind of some of the common emotional qualities that make great advocates. Not necessarily presidents, vice presidents of chapters, but like, who do you see consistently bubbling to the top as the kind of emotional qualities that make great advocates for trail?
Somebody that's passionate but accepted. Like, I think one of the bigger lessons that I learned in my life that kind of changed my whole perspective is nobody can actually make you do anything unless they have like a gun to your head or threatening you some way or some form. You choose how you react. You choose how you do your daily life. You choose the emotions that you give. So if you're happy about it, you choose yourself to be happy. If you're sad about it, you choose that fact too. And it's the people that, I don't know if they understand it from that factual sense or if they understand it just in basically how their personality is. But they understand that they can choose how to react to certain situations, and they can choose how to make things better. They can, again, be in these meetings where it may not be going their way. They may not be getting that whole big pie in the sky type of thing. But they're given an option, and they're given a smaller option than what they originally go in there for. You can choose to be pissed off about it, storm out of the room, and nothing gets done.
Right.
Or you can choose to be accepted. Even if you are upset about it, you can choose to accept it and be happy about that fact and go out there and make the best damn trail you possibly can in the little bit of space that you have.
That's a hell of a lot of emotional intelligence
and restraint.
And restraint for people who are, as you said, undeniably passionate about this thing, to like for people to develop in that space. And it's a hard thing to fight against.
And mountain bikers are notoriously emotional, even if they're not going to say that they are. They're notoriously emotional about everything that they do. And getting them to dial that back a little bit is so tough. It's so tough.
I mean, as judging from the pink bike comments, as we said, right? Like, yeah.
The positive
for the trees, and you're in them.
But the positive thing, I feel like, from our perspective, in terms of how do you engage those folks, is it's like the cliche of like, it's a lot easier to pull a rope than it is to push a rope, and it's a lot easier to come at something from having that passion versus what could quite possibly be the other side of the table, is folks that you're talking to that may say, okay, well, you're pitching 5 miles, I'll give you 1 mile. They have none of that passion. So it's how do you guide and how do you lead the folks with all of that fire, but also like keep it back to the Bubba analogy. How do you put a restrictor plate on all those folks so you can keep them all in a tight bunch and you can keep an eye on them all at the same time?
Yeah.
You got to let them know that if they do that 1 mile and they do it well, it'll lead to 10.
Yeah.
You won't get just 5, you'll get 10. And you gotta play the long game. Right? It's a long game. And the people you're talking to they're government people. And you got to speak the language. So you got to say, oh, well, this is going to have an environmental impact of blah, 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 and then an economic impact of blah, blah, blah. And, you're going to serve these many constituents in your area.
Yeah.
And they're not going to see it when you tell them that. They're going to see it when you bring them out there and you show them all the people that are using this thing. And when they actually see it for their own eyes and they say, whoa, okay, this is real. And we paid how much? We paid next to nothing for this asset.
Yeah. What if we invested $100,000?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a slow process. And, I never wanted to believe it when I was first starting out in the trail advocacy that it would take forever, but it does. It takes time. And it takes time to educate, and it takes time to get people to understand what you're talking about.
So if the long game is where we're at, right? If the long game is how this has to actually be played, and I fully agree with you, but I went to the Philip Darden school of influencing communities to build trail, so I may be biased. But if the long game is really a piece of it, let me ask you about the long game, just in general, right now where we sit. We're coming out of a year where, unfortunately, we've lost a ton of people this year, and it is devastating due to COVID, and things have changed. But where do you see the long tail opportunities, not only within, mountain biking, speak on that, please, but also within the larger sense of what we're looking at within the cycling and outdoor recreation community? Where do you see the big wins that we can carve out?
So I think that we're in the middle, if not right on the cusp of cycling renaissance in the US. You know, more people are on bikes than they were before. You can't get bikes because of supply chain, but you also can't get bikes because they're sold out. Like, people are buying them left and right. More trails are seeing more users. Every single trail system I go to talks about how their trails are being used more and more and more. Um, the federal government is dumping way more money into trail infrastructure than they ever have. You know, and the Great American Outdoors Act is huge for our national forests. There's bills that are going on right now that are going to bring even more money to trail projects. They understand the value. Um, COVID is and was a terrible thing, but one of the things that is a benefit of it is it showed how important our outdoor spaces are and how important of an asset our trails are. Be it a mountain biker, be it a hiker, be it anybody that just wants to, you know, socially distance and get some exercise. Like, they showed their value in all of this. And thankfully, a lot of powers that be have noticed that value and are gung ho and creating more and making these assets better. It's just, I think that it's a great time for any outdoor sport altogether.
So let me ask this to everybody. What can we do as the three of us, and what can the viewers as well as the listeners do from where they sit to continue to influence this?
Doug, you go first.
Oh, geez, I'm not used to going first. That's weird. I think it is to start to learn how to advocate appropriately for yourself, to how to have a professional and appropriate voice and approach people without just like posting on Facebook and being like, rah, 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 angry cat on keyboard. And to say, hey, look, you should come out and invite people to come out and experience and be out in those spaces, and not and learn how to advocate in an appropriate fashion. Because if you can get with a group that's doing good stuff in your area, you're going to be able to lift them up and be another voice. Learn how to do that piece of it and lift those people up because they want to make things happen in your area. I mean, we got a ton of people rolling it here, but if we even had 10 more or 10% more, that'd be wild. So I think that's the key that people need to hone in on right now. If you love doing something outside, advocate for it.
And I'll build on that and say, educate yourself. If you love doing something outside, educate yourself on what it is that you love about it and how that actually got there. You know, the biggest battle that I think we'll fight in the next few years is we'll have all these new users, but they don't know where these assets came from. They don't understand it. And that's because, you know, like I mentioned, I do all the social media and Outlook with stuff. That is really what I'm focusing in on now, is how do we reach those new users that probably know nothing about trail advocacy, nor how the trails were built or where they came from. How do we reach out to them and get them involved? How do we turn them from a new user to an advocate for trails? It's educating them, letting them know how we're doing, what we're doing, and what's going on in the future.
Yeah, I think, and I'll kind of build on that as well, is I think it's almost simplifying it down to appreciating every step of the process. So if it's, you know, being out on a natural surface trail and you're hiking, is smiling and saying hello to somebody hiking in the opposite direction, or saying hello to somebody on a bike, and if you're on a bike, saying hello to the hiker or the other person on a bike, and like winning those individual moments, but also kind of back to your point about taking the photos in the moment on a ride and being able to have those very crisp memories of it, of also being present enough to understand the thing that you're on is not, Mother Nature did not put that there for you to ride your bike on or to hike on. So taking the time to think about a human has influenced every inch of this trail that I'm walking or riding, and start there. Like, to me, it's absolutely ground zero. You don't need to necessarily go to finding your local group and being an advocate and putting sweat equity in on the trails. I think it's for all of these people that are just getting into it, just like you're saying, having the bare minimum of appreciating that a human hand has influenced every single inch of this trail, and letting that sink in to a point of like, I know how much work it is to mow my yard. I can't even imagine how much work it is to maintain a trail. Like, especially if any of the listeners have ever even just like walked a trail when it's kind of sprinkling, and you can see how much one footprint or one set of footprints can actually like disturb the soil on a trail. And think about that over all of the trail users that pile up. It's like just opening up the brain space in folks to just say, I appreciate everybody around me. I appreciate seeing everybody using these trails, and I appreciate the hell out of these specific trails that I'm on, whether they're paved paths or natural surface, because somebody was a part of doing all of that. And if that sits long enough, and if you engage with those trails long enough, eventually you're going to go dig into, I wonder who those people are, because I use them enough that I'd like to thank somebody for doing this. And then that's when the conversation of meeting a Butch Farrell or meeting a Doug McClintock or a Philip Darden comes in, and then those folks are off to the races because now they have their sensei that can kind of guide them into the process.
Damn it, I didn't want to go first. Thanks, Phil. See,
that's why you have to ask the question and then let everyone else answer.
See, This is what happens. I get put on the spot. I got to make some shit up. It sound good. And yes, John, you're right. Philip, you're right. That's absolutely all of it. Like, that is 100% the ball of wax.
I think it's all of it. And, like, you could even replace what you're saying about appreciation with any current event, really. Like, this whole world could be a lot better if we just appreciated a lot more things rather than
this whole conversation's been a double entendre. That's what it's. Just the whole thing.
And now,
hour and 20 minutes.
We're going to have to go because we have to go do our political podcast. For our political podcast, in which we'll discuss current events and politics. No, I think there are a lot of parallels, because the way you carry yourself in the world and the way that you move through this world matters. It's not inconsequential. And the way you present yourself and the way you deal with things and the way you navigate these challenges, whether you're trying to build trail or you're trying to get legislation passed, it matters, right? Like, the way that we operate and the way we take care of our neighbors and our communities matters. So if we operate, all of us, in that space, it's going to be a lot better.
Yeah. Dude. And I want to put a period on this, because he made a comment with Ryan's episode as well, and I think this is a perfect period to put on this. John coming back in,
John,
different,
from up north, yes.
When people love places, they become a steward of it. Like, it's when you develop that relationship with something, you naturally want to protect it. Don't mess with my family. Don't mess with my dogs. Don't mess with my cat. I will protect them. Like, I think getting to that point of getting people to respect and to honor those spaces, and they like, the rest of that stuff will happen. Like, Doug, to kind of your point, is you will get to that 10% if the right messaging is being used to just say that there is a human attached to every one of these things, and tying that to the overall experience of it, because that's the golf shot. Like, right? That's what we keep coming back for, is not to be outdoors and to commune with new people of like minds. And it's like, checkmate, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And Phil will be there to take a photo of it.
Of the landscape, not of
landscape, not
people.
Of you,
yeah.
Or himself.
He'll look at you and be like, "Okay, I'm gonna go that way."
Oh, look at that cool thing over there.
It's beautiful mountains and this nice fog that is rolling.
Could you move over? I can't see through you.
You're in my shot, dude.
You're
Get
in
out
my
of the
shot,
way.
sir.
Yeah.
You're in my shot. Well, dude, Philip, this has been absolutely exceptional. And we are going to come back and ask you the final question, which I know I prepped you for. I told you about this, that it will come. and that will come momentarily. But as we wrap the show up today, we want to thank all of you for listening, subscribing, engaging, and being part of TGL. All of you are the reason that this is what it is. We would not be here if we did not have y'all, the Pebbles, listening and being engaged with us. We cannot do this without your support. So in addition to y'all supporting the show and being here for us and being engaged in this, we encourage you to slide on over to all of our partners who help us make this happen. Show them some love if you can find it. Hand Up's got some new jazz coming out. There's a new windbreaker.
Yeah.
And order the new DWR windbreaker because I need a black windbreaker. Not that I don't have enough black windbreakers, but I need a new black windbreaker. So that's on the list. But go support the folks that support this show.
Yeah. And the first one is you guys have heard us talk about this a lot. It's Adam and all of the folks over at Be Free Ride Bike Cycling Apparel. They are making you guys fully customized apparel for yourself, your team, your charity ride, your organization, Philip.
Little plug.
Yeah, subtle, like like a sledgehammer. But it's not only is it fully customized from the art perspective, but you guys can pick the fabrics, you can pick the cut, you can pick the sleeves, you can pick the collar, like everything about it can be customized to what your specific team wants. Mountain bike gear, baggies, skin suits, road kit, multiple different price points, all of it. So it is probably the most hands-on cycling kit experience that you can have for yourself or for your whole organization. They do have some retail products on the website on bfrbcycling.com now that you can go look at, so you can kind of try it before you really buy into the whole custom kit piece. But be sure to go there. Again, it's Be Free Ride Bike Cycling at bfrb.com and take a look at how they can help you and your entire team get outfitted for the rest of this year and well beyond.
And also, if you like coffee, you should head to the link in our show notes and get with our good friend Dan at gripperbrothers.com right now. Get your hands on premium roast coffee that not only is delicious and tasty and does all those boxes that are very important when you're having coffee, but also supports amazing things. You may have seen him featured in the Bicycling Magazine gear review this year for Jessica's roast. Jessica being supported by the money that goes towards that roast. A portion goes to support their cycling journey. Dan is always doing good stuff and supporting the entire community. So don't forget that if you sign up for a subscription, you get a free month of coffee. So head on over to gripperbrothers.com right now and get yourself some exceptional coffee that supports good causes right here in cycling.
I've been making so much cold brew lately. The last 3 weeks, I've been making Grimport cold brew.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's nice just to mix it up and to have the same beans give you a completely different experience. So
I've been basically not sleeping for a number of reasons. So I'm not trying that. Yeah,
Why not?
I'm not
You
doing
should.
that.
You
No.
should.
I am
bring you some.
already on like tooth edge nails. No, I'm not doing that. I appreciate it. I'm sure it's delicious, but no.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, whatever.
Right.
At some point. On our next
right.
donut ride, I'll give
Okay,
you some.
cool. Sounds good.
Last
good
but
donut.
certainly not least, Hand Up Gloves. They are probably our oldest sponsor at this point. They're people that jumped on really, really early in the show, providing multiple different types of sports with amazing apparel and gloves in a range of designs that suits your personality, allows it to shine through, much like my favorite piece of outerwear, the one of 5, I think, flannels I own at this point. They've become my hoodie replacement because it's much like Philip. I am a t-shirt and jeans guy, and when it gets cold, it is hoodie, but now it is flannel season because they are that good. So click the link in our show notes and use code Pebble $, and you can save 10% off of everything in the Hand Up store. There is tons of new apparel, as Doug said, that just dropped. New gloves, new outerwear, new windbreakers.
The pro gloves are sick.
Whole bunch of stuff coming out. But cycling, golf, winter sports, all kinds of different applications. So it's well beyond cycling at this point. But they're great people, and they are people that we are so proud to be partners with and love that they support what we're doing. And so we think that you guys should go support them and then tell them and I don't know, maybe just yell at your screen when you're checking out that we sent you.
That's good. Yeah. Shout
that way somebody knows.
Yeah. They're always listening anyway, so
sure.
Somebody's listening.
Yeah. At least Alexa is.
Right. Yeah. Tell Alexa the Gravel-Lot sent you to buy hand-up gloves.
Yeah. Bezos is currently listening on his dick.
Harvesting all your data.
For sure. We love hearing from all of you. So make sure to subscribe and visit our social feeds. Come tag us on stuff. Go to thegravelot.com to stay up to date on everything. Join our live shows every other Tuesday. And then make sure to get our episodes every other Thursday. Catch us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Streamlabs, all those things. And come engage with us when we're doing our live interviews. We love having you here.
If you guys like the new intro and outro music, it is from music producer Wadaboy, so please go check him out on all the different forms. He's on SoundCloud and Spotify and a whole bunch of different locations. So Wadaboy, Wataboi. Go check him out. Thank him for allowing us to use his music, and click the link in the show notes and learn more.
Absolutely. So, Philip, we have had a long-ranging discussion from you ripping a tricycle down a hill with your dad pushing you with a broom, which seems dangerous, and I'm here for, all the way to kind of where we're at right now in the state of things. So we have got one final question for you, and that is this. What would you like the Pebbles, our fine listening audience, to take home with them from our conversation today?
Oh, man. All the above. I guess so I'll finish off with one last little bit of thing that I was actually thinking about on my walk today with my dog when it was not raining, because it's been raining here and there. The one thing that we all have that we can actually take with us is character. Everything else is disposable, but the character of who you are and what you do and what you're passionate about is the only thing that you actually have. Embrace it, hold on to it, fight for it, and be the best person you possibly can be. Like that's it.
I think that really sums up a lot of what we talked about today. It's kind of an all-encompassing synopsis of getting up and standing up in front of people and sharing your passion for something that you really believe in and learning more about it and understanding when you don't know everything about something and asking for help. And yeah, that does a really good job of summarizing everything, I think.
I agree. And Phil, from me personally, thank you for teaching me a lot about character and setting me on a path that put me here interviewing you in a weird way. So I don't know how that actually happens, but
say it.
What?
Butterfly effect.
Oh, damn it. No, we're not.
One moment.
He always says butterfly effect, and it's just annoying.
And I now I love saying it out of sport just because it bothers Doug so much.
I hate that term. But yeah, cool. You flapped your wings, and I appreciate it. So thank you. There you go. Look, everyone, if you didn't see the video, Philip flapped his wings. It's excellent. So thanks for being here, dude. Really, seriously, excellent time. We look forward to doing this again and catching up with you and finding out what's going on in your world. So.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for giving me the time to come on and talk about what we're doing here in the Southeast. And I really appreciate it, Doug. You're awesome. John, you're awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We're glad to have had you. So as always, huge thanks to all you Pebbles for joining us. We cannot do this without your support. As we've said before, click subscribe, click like, do all those things, and visit thegravelot.com. That is all for this week. So be sure to subscribe, follow, and engage, because as we say, decisions and trails are made by those who show up. So if we don't see you on the trails this week, we'll see you next time. Bye, John.
Bye, Doug.
Thank you.